Welcome to Marcor Studios, where here we will be interviewing different industry professionals and educating our homeowners as well as the industry as a whole. We hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Marcor Studios. We are here today with Damien Caldwell. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Share where you're from and what you do.
So we're a couple of hats, but I'm the president for the iFraud Foundation, which is how we originally started meeting. I'm also the president for the Long Island Claims Association. So iFraud is an organization that was started by a group of employers. So we got together and we were discussing that on the defense side of the house, we don't do a really good job in sharing information. So what we were saying was, on the plaintiff's counsel side, the trial lawyers do a phenomenal job. They've invested millions of dollars in technology and data sharing. They know how to approach every law firm, every carrier, and why they are so effective in filing their suits and claims against us, whereas we don't do as well a job of sharing that information. So we got a group of construction primarily, because as the president for Long Island Claims, a lot of our membership was construction. And this was born out of a fraud discussion at one of our workshops. So the caveats were they didn't want it owned by a for-profit entity. They wanted this developed. They would be willing to share data as long as it was non-for-profit and with the sole purpose of helping to proactively identify and fight fraud. So we got involved.
What kind of fraud?
Insurance fraud, staged accidents, all types of industry fraud that are impacting the, construction, automotive, and just our general industry. It's a nationally, insurance fraud as a whole is a $308 billion issue.
That's it?
That's it, $308 billion across the entire country.
That's horrible.
If you made that a GDP, insurance fraud itself would be the 22nd largest country in the world.
Oh gosh.
The numbers are insane, and New York captures
a good percentage of it.
80 billion of that.
Yeah,
it's just
not
us.
shocked.
We're such a special state that we live in with our laws. But so that's where it came from, and it wasn't. You'll see a lot of posts if you're following our LinkedIn accounts from trial lawyers and things saying like, "Oh yeah, you're driven by insurance companies. You're a mouthpiece for the carriers." We're not. The foundation was started with New York City School Construction Authority, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, L&M Construction, private construction entities that are feeling the direct impact of this fraud on them, seeing how many claims are coming in, seeing the number of staged accidents that are just occurring. And then we started reaching out to the carriers throughout the year, and we became a very boots on the ground organization. So, we help to educate the public, bringing to light all of the issues and how this impacts everyday people like us who just sit there, and why we pay so much higher for our produce, for our rent, for things like that. Yeah. Nobody realizes how that impact trickles down to us every day of the week.
Yep.
And I think who did a great job with starting to bring that to light, I have to give them credit, were Kristen Thorne, formerly of ABC News. She broke the story, did a piece on staged accident fraud. And it was just incredible, and tied that into explaining to everyone how this happens.
I had interviewed with her at that time when she was doing it. And she did an amazing job on it.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. And then as far as putting the drive and really making this happen industry wise and bringing attention, I got to give a lot of credit to the folks at Tradesman.
Yes,
they took the risk. They jumped out there, spent a lot of money to fight it, and are still fighting it to this day. And now we see New York. We have, I think, about 30 RICO filings just in New York State for this. So Tradesman, Greater New York Insurance just jumped on the bandwagon there, which is great because to see those carriers of that magnitude start coming into play now, and their RICO suit is phenomenal. I mean, we just was a case that just came out yesterday where it's actually referred to as the Subin blueprint.
So elaborate a little more on a RICO suit so listeners can understand what exactly does that mean?
So a RICO suit it's Racketeering, Influence, Corrupt Organization Act. It was originally created to go after organized crime.
Yep.
So, there's certain criteria to make it a RICO suit. You have to have say mail fraud, communication fraud, laundering, and all of our, or with a staged accident, we kind of hit almost all of them at
Yep.
once. And the reason they use it is because a RICO suit will go after them, and you can bring all of the pieces together and go after everyone. And from the residual side, from a monetary benefit, it's a treble award. So it's 3 times the amount. So if they lost, for simplified, $1 million, they can sue for 3.
Okay.
And that's why the carriers are really going after it, to bring back recoup not only the money they lost on these claims, but the money
the
it costs
time
to
and
fight
effort.
it.
Yeah.
It's very expensive. So when they did this, they started looking at these investigations, and they noticed that we had law firms like, the Subin firm, who's named in several, Liakis law firm, who's named in several, Wingate. There's a bunch of law firms that were the repeat offenders.
I would say the same name coming out
Over
often.
and over. Matter of fact, one of the risk managers I spoke to from Federal Express, from FedEx, had said, he was looking at his New York claims, and before this even became a big public thing, he's like, I noticed that if they were injured and treated with this physician and had this attorney, I already knew what the outcome was going to be.
Yeah.
We're going for a spinal fusion. Something's going to come down the line, and your average spinal fusion being, between $1.5 to $3 million, depending on how
Yeah.
much treatment they're going ahead. That's a lot of money.
Yep.
So with Kristen, when she broke that story from Subin, and then Tradesman and all these other companies like Andromeda Advantage and Ionian filed their suits, Subin themselves withdrew from, and again,
300.
allegedly, they withdrew from 300 cases
Yep.
that they themselves said they believed were now fraudulent
Yep.
in how they originated them.
Like, what does that tell you? In
Yeah.
one day, a firm pulled 300 suits out.
Tell me I'm involved without telling me I'm
Yeah,
involved.
like-
That's it's.
But so the reality of the severity of this is so scary, because, like, you and I don't know if you were on one of the calls. I was on the call with Denny Salas from Gotham as well, and we were talking about, and that's obviously, how we met. I'm sure we'll get into that eventually. But we were talking about real life situations, because I'm coming from the residential sector, of being able to share with you guys what we're seeing from a residential standpoint. And, the residential stuff is actually what I feel is catering in more, because there's less regulations there. There's less eyes watching. There's more things that can happen. You've got less OSHA presence. You've got, it's catch me if you can. There's very little state regulations here, or that are at least they could be there. They're not enforced. So you got guys that are maybe getting paid half on, half off, or they're getting paid off the books. And, you and I have talked about this. You got companies that are dodging the workers' comp. They're dodging the liability insurance. They're the homeowners thinking they're getting the best price possible, and when you deal with this labor law 240, 241, the first thing people say is, oh, well, you're excused as a single or two-family homeowner. Sure, if you're not in direction of the work. But what does that mean? Are you in direction of the work? Obviously picking out a color, you're not directing work on a residential project. But how many homeowners can't afford the general contractor?
No.
So they hire the demo company, or they hire the flooring company, and they're coordinating trades. You're now directing that work.
Or you're married to my wife, and you will direct every piece of that action that goes across, from buying the equipment to who's working on the job at what day and where it goes. And now she's just become a project manager.
And how do you have somebody fight that the homeowner's not responsible? There's going to be a defense still that the homeowner still has to understand where this labor law comes into play.
When you brought that up on the coalition call, I was floored, because even myself, I've been looking at so much of the commercial aspect of it. I never considered the residential problems. And then when you tied that in and stating that there's also staged accidents that occur on the residential side, and started discussing how that all was occurring on that end, it was a mirror image just on a small scale. And I couldn't believe it.
Perfect example. So I don't know if you were on the call when I shared this one, but Denny heard the story and he was like, oh, I got to get you in front of this one and this one. And basically we had, it was the day I remember I got the call from the attorney, and we had just settled a suit, and he was my first call, because I was so angry that they decided to settle. And the answer from the insurance company is, hey, it was cheaper to settle and pay out.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking, it was like $150,000 payout, maybe more. But the guy claimed to have fallen off the roof. He fell 9 feet. Well, the interesting thing was, one, I thought you can't go after a homeowner on a single or two-family home if they're not directing the work. Well, guess what? Homeowner got deposed. Homeowner got sued. Homeowner went through the gamut, had to get an attorney. And yes, they got out of it on the fact that it was a single or two-family home. They still paid for that. Second, he wasn't even on site. We keep rosters of every job on site. We have photos of every site. We know who's on every site. He wasn't on site, and he was apparently allegedly so hurt that he broke his back and his leg, but didn't go to Nassau University Hospital for 10 days. What did that tell you? That he got hurt 10 days later, could only remember where he worked for the last person who actually had insurance, so decided to come after mine and got paid out. That's not fair. And it was, of course, we don't subcontract a lot of our work, but we had been busy. We had happened to sub that one job. It was a very small 5-square job. He was not on site, but he got a 6-figure payout on a job he wasn't even at because it was cheaper to settle.
And that's such a shame. And this is something that comes with a lot of the carriers. And it becomes a business decision versus a right-wrong decision.
Yeah.
Because when they look at the potential of it becoming, 1.5 million settlement or payout versus 150,000, like they consider that a win.
Yeah.
But then what you're doing is still you're incentivizing them because
they know they're getting something.
It's still a 6-figure payout.
Exactly.
And what we've learned a lot of the times is for at least on the commercial side, and if it's the same organizations that are tied in with you guys doing this on the residential side, is that a lot of these claimants are actually kind of victims themselves. So
I'm going to give you a great example of where that is, because when these phone calls come, I try and bring them right in front of Denny. And I got a call. This happened a couple of months ago. I had a guy who, I don't know whether it was he turned the wrong way or something happened. He was bringing solar panels up to a roof, and he said he like turned the wrong way and pulled something, and never notified us of how he was supposed to. Never reported it to us how our handbook requires you to. He happened to be the lead on the project. It was his responsibility to report it. He calls me that night, and he's like, the next morning, and said, "Hey, listen, I got a little hurt yesterday. I'm a little tired because I took melatonin last night so I could sleep after I spoke to my attorney." I said, "What do you mean?" It was, I remember what it was. We have Teletronics in our truck. So they were driving. He didn't get hurt on a site. He was driving, and thank God for Teletronics in my truck, that it was somebody was coming off of a merge and tried to cut in front of the guys. They were riding on the shoulder and cut in front of them and said, "Oh, your guys hit my guys." I said, "All right, well, I guess we'll go to the cameras and double check it." I had already seen the camera. I already saw the footage. I knew that my guys blatantly got hit, but he was working, right? So typically that would be on a line of, does it fall under comp or the, auto, how it is. But either way, we were informed that he was working, so it would have fell under comp. So he was like, "Hey, can I get a copy of that video?" I said, "For what?" He said, "Well, I spoke to my attorney last night. I had to take some melatonin last night because I wasn't really feeling great." Well, melatonin's going to help you sleep, not help you with pain, but I got it. But he said, "Yeah, if I was hurting." I said, "Well, did you go to the hospital? Have you gotten looked at?" I said, "Because now you just told me you're hurt. Guess what? You're out of work until I have a doctor's note clearing you. So you just hurt yourself there. Are you hurt or are you not? Because I need to know if you're hurt." So case in point, I get it out of him that he wasn't hurt, but his lawyer told him that he had a really good case and that he wanted to be able to go
doctor for you
after.
to go treat with.
Yep.
Know what we're
And
doing.
here I'm sitting here and I'm like, "No, you're not." I said, "You could tell your attorney that he can, he can request it and get it through the proper channels. You're not getting it directly from me." But at the end of the day, the kid was looking for a payout.
Yep.
And okay, it's quick money. Human nature, I guess people are going to try and grab it. But we're allowing this.
That's the blueprint. So that's what they call the Subin blueprint, right? So they come in, they're not really hurt, but go see our doctor. We're recommending which is illegal in of itself, right? They're not supposed to be providing medical treatment or guidance. So go see their doctors. They get these treatments. The doctors, unfortunately, are in on the scheme themselves. Yep. So you're seeing them. I mean, one of the biggest ones that we've seen out there is from Nassau University Medical Center. Repeat reports, 42 reports for the same thing. People not really needing the treatments that they're getting, and they're cutting these people. They're actually performing surgeries on these people, hurting them. And now they're stuck. Now they're really stuck with lifetime pain. And the irony, no, that's not even ironic. It's terrible that these people go through this. And then at the end of it, they don't get half the money that's paid out to them. Nope. So I think there was one suit that we looked at. It was like an $800 $100,000 settlement, and the person ended up walking away with like 18,000
What?
because they took out. So how the whole thing runs out, and on both sides of the house, is we have third party litigation funding, right? So
Yeah.
the law firms like Leacus that actually have their own funding companies, they will say, okay, go treat for this doctor, but comp requires you have your guidelines, right? So 12 weeks of conservative treatment, but they don't want to wait 12 weeks. They got to get this stuff done quick. So we'll pay for it. Don't worry. So the doctors get paid through the funding company, and they perform all the procedures regardless of whether it's approved on comp or not. So the funding company, prior to the regulations that just changed, which were amazing regulations, those interest rates were upwards of, between 50, 70, some of them 80%. So you get a settlement that's 80% to the, or 70% to the third party litigation funding company. You've got 33% to the attorney's fees, and then whatever you're left with after that. And it's amazing. There's actually a great suit that was out there where two plaintiff firms in Jersey sued each other because of this, where they were actually left in the negative after everything came through. They're like, they can't pay us and pay you and pay the company, and they have nothing left for their settlement. So you're hurt for life, you're getting pennies, and it's just, is it really worth it?
So if you think about it though, like I dig into like anytime we have comp situations or anything like that. And it's crazy because right now I have a guy who seriously, I was there at the hospital. He took a fine tool and severed his whole hand. And when he went in for surgery, it was the type of operation that the stomach would heal. So we didn't know when he went in for surgery, when he came out, the doctor said, we don't know if his thumb is going to be lodged into his stomach and sewn there temporarily till it regrows, or if we're going to be able to try and heal this himself on its own. And the guy still works for us. He happened to be a carpenter at the time. He healed a couple weeks later. He's like, I can't be home anymore. I don't want to be out on comp. I want to work. I promoted him to a project manager where he was on site. He wasn't lifting anything. We got it approved for his doctor. That's the only type of guy that really should have been out on comp legitimately for a longer period of time.
And you'll find that the people who legitimately want to work, they get injured they want to come back to work.
Yes.
They don't want to sit on their couch. They don't want to do
100%.
They have an ethic of getting back and doing what they're supposed to do. These guys, and especially the ones where they're migrants that are brought into the country, so right now, from what was discovered in the pattern, or we'll say the anatomy of a staged accident, we have organized crime bringing them in. So they'll bring them in from across the border. They'll assign them to a coyote, bring them up to New York or wherever they're doing, because this is happening all over the country. Yep. And then their payment for being brought into the country is you're going to stage an accident for us. So they put them on site, they stage the accident, they assign them to these doctors, they butcher them, and then sometimes they're not even around. They're back in their country by the time the settlements are done, or they've just disappeared, which is usually what happens. And then we've been lucky enough to find a couple of them. Kristen interviewed one where he was a stolen identity situation. There was others where there was a young girl who went to the New York Post, and she had
she got
Post
interviewed.
article,
I saw that.
3 spinal fusions, screws, surgeries.
She's like, she was 20-something and walks around feeling like she's 60 or 70.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just terrible. And that's where...
But this is organized crime feeding into this also.
So it's kind of like all around. So you'll have residential, you have both sides of it, as you were explaining, where there's a part of the employer's piece trying to just stay alive, needing to manage and navigate these high premiums so that they can actually win bids and do stuff, which hurts overall. And to explain for the listeners, what happens is that the way it works is the way workers' comp and insurance is priced is on you, and you can probably explain better than me, but it's based on your salaries, on your reported payrolls. So in order to keep that insurance cost down, they don't report all the salaries on their payroll.
Correct.
And listen, that's fraud as well.
Or not using the right code. You say, okay, you got a roofer versus a carpenter, you're going to pay less per per hundred, or than you're going to be paying for.
So we're on a big job. We have 15 secretaries and one person on site.
I see this all the time when I'm up for big bids, and then I say, forget it. If that guy could do this, I don't like to sub work, but you know what? Let me see if I could sub my work to him, because at that number I could just sub to him and give him my residential work. Yeah. And when I reviewed the policies, because I know what I'm looking at with them, I see that they're showing $7,000 in roofing payroll on $1.5 million job though. Yeah. That's labor only. Well, how are you getting? You're we know you're not going to get an audit on the back end. You're supposed to, but if you're not showing the money, we know what you're doing. But why is the government not looking into this?
Yeah.
They just want to keep taking more money out of mine in your pockets.
Which is what happens. They'll go up. So those premiums go up. We pay more. You pay more. It's harder for small businesses to win more bids. And as they're going on, it's just such a hard competition level. And then on the state's accident side of it, these people are committing these crimes you're going through, and it's just impacting everyone across the board.
Yeah.
But
they're getting away with it.
And they are getting away with it. Well, on the
For
residential
now.
side, yeah, it's been
That's why they're
lot
diving
coming
into
up.
the resi side, because there's less eyes looking there now.
Yeah.
And it's harder to catch them. But there need to be more parameters put there.
Agree, totally. And I think one of the things we really agree on is that we need to bring this more to light.
Yeah.
And I know when you brought it up on the coalition call, and just so everyone knows, we keep mentioning this coalition call, there is a staged accident coalition in New York that works specifically focused on, fighting these staged accidents, because it is such a big piece, and it is a massive coalition, and it's only been around for 2 years, and in the 2 years, the amount of progress we've seen has been phenomenal. So we're really excited about that, and we're continuing to fight for this and push this forward. There's also another, the New York Build Coalition, which is specifically about scaffold law and that 240 law we mentioned, which is just impacts New York only. We are the only state that has it. For everyone to understand what that means is it's absolute liability. So that means that if you get hurt on a job, that your employer is 100% liable, regardless of whether you were drunk on the job, whether whatever, you had partial fault, you didn't listen to the safety instructions, your employer is liable. So what the state is pushing for, and Congressman Langworthy has a bill out right now, is pushing for comparative negligence, which is like what you have in your car accident, right? You get in a car accident, who's at fault? You pay your fair share of the accident. So New York is the only state in the entire country that does not have that. So, and that's why our premiums are high. That's why we have insurance companies that are no longer writing in New York. And then we have, the trickle down effect, why we pay so much for our rent. And
why are we paying auto insurance? Our auto insurance is crazy. Our homeowners insurance is crazy. This is it's actually stemming from the construction industry, and people don't realize that. And the more they hire the improperly insured companies, they're actually exposing themselves and taking the risk as well. So there's just so many different angles of this that are an issue that just they need to end. Like, the homeowners that say, hey, I'm going to pay cash for this job, those days are ending. Like, those days are going to come to an end sooner than later, because those are the companies that are losing the comp, they're losing the liability insurance. And by paying a contractor cash, you're actually helping all of these other companies that are doing things the wrong way or that are washing money by not actually following what needs to happen. They need to make sure that they're paying their guys on the payroll. And again, it doesn't directly affect a consumer, but it does directly affect a consumer. They don't realize that. Let's paint the picture. You hire me to be your contractor, okay? And here is my employee. And he gets hurt. In New York State, he cannot sue me. I'm his employer. He has workers' compensation for that. But if there's a general contractor, they can go sue them and hope that they have a proper indemnification and that I have the right insurance, that they can attend to the claim back to me. So now I pick up on the liability and the workers' comp. The problem is not everybody has that proper liability insurance. And even here, they might not have the proper liability insurance. So that's where, or there's a homeowner involved that was directing the work, or they're flipping a house, or they're, maybe GCing a project themselves, whatever they may want to be doing. Maybe it's an Airbnb they're building, maybe it's a rental property, whatever they're doing, or there's a for-profit out of that property. They are now liable just as equally as the general contractor liable. So it is not that a homeowner is completely out of the mix. But now you end up going in and you've got these guys that they're not paying taxes here. And we're not talking illegals. We're not talking people illegally here. We're talking about your average American that just doesn't want to pay taxes. Do you want to pay taxes? I don't. But we have to. It's one of the guarantees in life, right? So they're minimizing what they're showing, but what happens when they get hurt? Maybe they're paid half on, half off, right? So if they're making $80,000 a year, they're only showing $40,000. So now that company is only paying $40,000 into payroll tax, unemployment, disability, Social Security, but they're also only paying the $40,000 the comp on that 40,000. They're only paying the liability insurance on likely that 40,000 because it's a lot of these policies are based on payroll. So now you've got these companies that are paying half of what they should, but the homeowners and the property owners need to get mad. Want to know why? Because when that guy, God forbid, gets hurt, he's only paying half the premium, but he's taken out of the same bucket. And they're getting the payout out of that same bucket that they said, oh, well, but they should be paying double, maybe triple or quadruple what they're paying in premiums. And they're getting away with it. So they're taking it actually out of the guys that are paying big premiums. It goes in this bucket. It's invested in whatever these, funds are. They're paying out. They're getting a settlement. But these guys are getting those settlements and they shouldn't be. So you fall and you make 40,000, you make 400,000. Doesn't make a difference of what you make. The injury is the injury. So people have figured this game out. Why are we not calling it out?
Yeah. And what homeowners don't realize is, like you said, it can come back to them. And, contracts are there for a reason. They're not there for when it's all rainbows and everything goes right. But somebody gets hurt on that job. You've used that for cash person. If you're paying them for cash, you're not having anything in writing. It's not going there. You have nothing to fall back on. You are now liable, and now it's on your property. It's your insurance directly. So
if it's even your insurance.
If it's even your insurance.
A lot of people don't realize that it does. Your homeowner's insurance doesn't even cover it in many cases.
There's so many, because you're required to have protected yourself, and if you don't, then it won't cover it. There's so many variations, and people think that hey, I'm cutting a corner, I'm saving a little money. It's a great idea, but there's a reason why these things are structured the way they are. So that it's protection across the board. And you'll see a lot, and you'll hear, as we start to bring this to light more on the residential side, guarantee you we'll have the injury lawyers that are out there saying we're just trying to hurt those workers. You're trying to hurt everybody else. But
what are we trying to hurt?
That's what
You want to know where we're trying to hurt? We're trying to hurt ourselves by trying to make sure that we're putting them in a safe working space, that we're giving them proper fall protection, we're giving them the proper training and the certifications. And then when we leave the job site, they take their harnesses off. And if they fall off that roof, we pay the bill. Why is that fair? Why should, if you worked for me, I say, okay, I have a penalty program or this write-up program. Here's your safety manual. Here's all your fall protection and your trainings. I'm going to put you through this training. It's going to cost me a couple $1,000s. Here's your OSHA cards. You went through the training. You deserved it, right? Now, here's your fall protection. Here's how to use it. Here's what we expect of you. I want photos of it. I want photos of it being used. You're going to have a disciplinary action. You're going to get written up if you don't. But they unhook and they fall and they know that they're going to get paid out anyway. Okay, so we'll find another job. I've lost guys simply because I've had other companies poach them saying, we won't make you wear the fall protection like Marcor does. But that's the law. Yeah. So you're giving people an opportunity where if I was driving in your car and I was sitting in your front seat and I didn't have a seatbelt on and we got pulled over, who gets that ticket? Are you getting the ticket for me not having a seatbelt, or am I? I'm getting the ticket and as a passenger. So how come OSHA doesn't want to fine the employee? Do you know how our accidents would drop if OSHA was out there and there was some sort of employee responsibility there?
Yeah.
If the employee speeds in the work-operated vehicle, the speeding ticket goes to the employee. So if the safety violation, you want to give it to the company, you should be able to say, hey, I've done this. They're a big boy or girl. They should be following the rules.
And they can work it out because OSHA. So the argument from the OSHA side, you're obviously going to say is like, oh, it's enforcement. It's too hard for us to enforce. We don't have that bandwidth. But you empower the employers to do so and put that into a penalty fund, the same way you take out taxes for everything else.
But the Department of Labor won't let you.
And that's the piece. And I think where almost like it's going on with the fraud. So we'll talk about just to tie in the auto for a second. It doesn't really tie to the construction, but all the auto fraud and the budget that we've seen from the governor now. We believe firmly that that's happening because of how loud it became of what was going on. The publicity, the Bell Parkway accident, watching the camera back up. It's gotten to the point that something had to be done. There's no way to avoid it. You can't ignore it anymore. We are there with construction.
We are definitely there with construction. The problem with it being with construction is nobody wants to touch it.
Yeah. And that's where we're starting to, as the foundation, for us, it's getting the word out, organizing, educating. We have to walk a fine line because we are 501c3, so we can't lobby, we can't, push it. We can teach about what's going on and not, but we do work closely with the Lawsuit Reform Alliance of New York, who Tom Stebbins, it's everybody who's he was in the paper today about the things that are going on here. So they have been very active, and that's their job. That's what they do.
That's who got me involved in the State Jackson Coalition.
So it's amazing with the work that they're pushing forward, and they're lobbying heavily for these changes. And then it's just, for me, as a just common sense person, the illogical arguments that I see coming from the other side, which are purely monetarily driven.
Yeah.
We don't, you're trying to steal, again, the argument, stealing rights away from the workers. Matter of fact, what rights are we taking? Them going home to their family at night? We have, there's a website and a LinkedIn page called the Workers' Rights Alliance that was started by a PR company, Click Strategies here in New York. We've done all the research, so this is all done. Actually, I published a piece putting all these pieces together. That was research done by one of the law firms that we just kind of like pulled it all in. And their whole goal, and they're paid for by one of the law firms that I'll not name, that they're out there, and their whole goal is just to create this illusion that we're trying to hurt the workers. And when you go on and you ask why or how, tell me how reforming scaffold law changes OSHA rules. At all. It doesn't change safety. How does it do it? But no one will respond. No one will respond. No one will say anything. So what we're doing is trying to push this to the point that someone has to say something.
So the reality is that, fine, you don't want to get rid of the scaffold law. I understand we've lobbied against it for decades. But guess what? Then enforce it. Then do something to enforce it. Make it that you can't write a policy with a labor law exclusion in New York if that's the case. Level the playing field to make everybody have the same stuff. Don't give the opportunity for somebody to have something that's subpar.
Our system right now incentivizes the bad actors.
100%.
So that they look at it, it's a well-oiled, and it's been years. The question we get a lot is, how did this suddenly become the fraudemic now? Matter of fact, somebody wrote an op-ed the other day, which we responded to, but it kind of just the position alone is that the fraudemic is this made-up thing that we're using to push an agenda. Yeah. It's not. How you can't look at what's going on in this industry and see there are 4 insurance companies left in New York that will write large construction projects. That's it. Out of all the insurance companies around, that's nothing. Yeah. It's hard for these people to find that. These accidents, because the premiums are so high, you have subcontractors on bigger jobs that can't afford the premiums. They can't put their people to work because it's just too high. Yep. And that now we have all our DEI initiatives from the infrastructure bills and things that came out in the last administration that they're not even able to fulfill. Yep. But to your point, what happens? They just say, oh, okay, well, for this job, don't worry about it. You don't need to have the minority or women-owned business on this one. It's okay. We realize there's not enough of them for you to do it, so we'll waive it. Then you're not enforcing it. 100%. You're making it so that they can do this.
And as a WB, it's frustrating because there are companies out here. They're not looking. And there's platforms for us to be on, and we're there. They don't want to do it. They just want to give it where either they know they're getting a rebate, or they know that they're getting some sort of kickback, or they have a relationship, or whatever the case is. They don't want to put in that extra work all the time. But I do know that there's a lot of players out there that do put those efforts in too. So you got people that capitalize off of an opportunity. And unfortunately, the more these things happen, the more you present opportunities for the next person in line to do it. Somebody hears that they had an opportunity to make a quick buck, somebody else is going to try and do the same thing. It's just like remember those stocks with the GameStop? Right?
Oh,
and everybody was buying that stock,
so
and the apps were shutting down. But guess what? We live in a society where people like to follow one another because, oh, you made a quick buck. Oh, you bought the Tesla stock. Oh, you're going to go buy SpaceX. Oh, you want the new, Tesla battery wall, or whatever the case may be. Oh, you got an electric car. Everybody wants what everybody else has. So all you're doing is instilling it in people, giving people an opportunity to do it, and then giving them a pathway to continue it with zero penalty.
And I think the road to change for this, because obviously it's reform and tort reform and getting legislature involved, and to start, people just need to come together. And so for us, like at the foundation, our whole tagline is collaboration crushes fraud. And we will work with anyone and everyone that is interested in moving this direction. So we've met with all the major companies. We've met with most of the major carriers. The only way to do this is to start sharing data across all of us and really start being able to analyze, we could identify these patterns because it's not just within one carrier. So every carrier has their SIU. They do a decent job in looking at their individual claims. But that same person is on this job site with this carrier, this one with this one. And now we can identify all of that in milliseconds in today's world.
Yep.
And you could do it without having to disclose PHI. We can look at the transactional data behind the scenes. We have the platform designed to do this already. It's just getting them past we'll call the fear factor of, oh God, do we really do it? It's how they've done. They operate in these silos for so long.
Yeah.
But it needs to happen. And it's something that the employers are pushing, they're needing. And people from the employer side, from your end of the world, need to really start understanding what data that they do own, where their value is. Yep. Data has a significant value. And in most of your policies, they'll see that the owner, the carrier controls that data. That language needs to start changing. Yeah. The carriers can still have ownership of it because they're part of it, but the employers need to also have ownership to do what they want. Yeah. And I know that argument's been held in court with some larger employers that are in high deductible programs, and they've won. When they said, this is our data, it's our employees, it's our stuff, these are our claims. And yes, it's a deductible program, but deductible, I'm paying you back that money. So you're getting it in the end. Just because you're paying first dollar doesn't mean you're not getting it. And the SIRs, that's completely there. So they shouldn't have an argument. So, it's an evolution. And I know it's not going to change overnight. So, but what we've seen is minds being opened a lot more now. We spent a full year having these meetings. We actually just had a very positive meeting with the carrier last week. So we're excited. These discussions will continue, but if we can get them to the point that on a national level, we look at this, and both on the commercial and residential side, and if there's similar carriers that are writing all these policies, so the data's there.
Yep.
And now we can use it. And then taking that, being able to proactively identify the bad stuff, but then the measures, the legislative changes, the reform that needs to happen so that, we don't have the same problem, that you're not seeing cash trucks pull up and pay people, and that employer and education, and that the homeowners know, listen, this could get me in trouble.
Yep.
This could cause me a problem. I am so, because of what I see, like my wife will be like, oh, we got a friend that could do this. I'm like, nah. I'm like, licensed, insured.
I gotta tell you, I had my husband leave the house when the guys come hang the Christmas lights.
Yeah.
I'm like, don't be there. You can't. I go, I want to be listed additional. He's like, are you crazy? It's Christmas lights. I go, yeah, that's when it's going to happen. On something stupid, Christmas lights.
Yeah, it is. You just let them do their job.
Yeah.
And you don't realize that. You don't realize, because I wouldn't think about it until we had those conversations. I didn't think about it at all, because I know we're the ones like, yeah, that's too low. Can we move that here? Let's do that.
Tell me if that, because we're in the business,
and then,
tell me if a good lawyer is going to say, well, that you're directing the work. You told them you didn't like where that crown molding was, or you wanted the light lowered, or whatever the case is. So I know you and I could talk about this for hours. I know that we're going to continue to talk about this for hours, but I want to thank you for being here today. And
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Very excited to be able to be a part of this between the Stage Accident Coalition and iFraud. Anything that you guys need my support in, I am a call away.
I'm looking forward to working on this stuff with you. And for your viewers, if you want to learn more, go to ifraud.org. Our information is there. There's actually a great education center. We actually post all the RICO suits as well. All of our deep dives. So you'll be able to listen to our podcast and run through and learn about it all. And we break it down really simple so that it runs through. But thank you for having us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.